Greetings, Spooky fans! Michael here, and real quick, this video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stay tuned to the end of the video for more information about their amazing web design services. Pokemon Sword and Shield are probably the most divisive Pokemon games in the history of Pokemon. Never in my time of being a Pokemon fan have I witnessed so much arguing between other fans and so much criticism directed towards a new Pokemon game before it even comes out. Since I've been active on the internet and social media, all of Gen 6 and Gen 7 happened, and I didn't witness any criticism like this. X and Y, I saw very little criticism. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, I saw very little criticism leading up to release, and then some people saying they didn't like it after the games already had come out. Sun and Moon, the only real criticism I saw was that they revealed too much before the games actually came out. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon were called a cash grab since they were very similar to Sun and Moon and came out only a year later, but I didn't see a whole lot of criticism towards the quality of the games themselves. Let's Go was called watered down and people didn't like the Go mechanics or the fact that there were only the 150 original Pokemon in it, but I feel like most people that played the game still had a lot of fun with it. I certainly did. None of that comes close to what I have seen for Sword and Shield. Most of the posts in the Pokemon subreddit are bashing Sword and Shield. I have seen more than one top post of r/gaming bashing Sword and Shield. And of course Twitter, as usual, is a giant cesspool of negativity and arguing, with virtually all of the replies to any tweet by the official Pokemon Twitter being filled with hashtag #BringBackTheNationalDex. Now, of course, not everyone has been extremely negative towards Sword and Shield. There are plenty of fans out there who are extremely excited for the games. However, that starkly contrasts with the people who think it's gonna suck, so the Pokemon fanbase has kind of been divided into two halves. There's been a ton of arguing between these two halves, and as a result, there's also been, unfortunately, a lot of harassment. This has been kind of an uncomfortable situation for me because as a lifelong Pokemon fan, I'm pretty used to the Pokemon fan base being, well, fans of the game. This massive divide has been weighing pretty heavily on me, so much so that I'm almost constantly thinking about one really big question. Will Pokemon Sword and Shield be bad games? I'm going to attempt to answer that question in this video in the most unbiased way that I can. Obviously, I am a huge Pokemon fan, so I'm going to have some inherent biases, but I'm going to do my best to table those and represent a fair discussion that takes into account both points of view. So don't forget to leave a like on the video, and let's start by going back in time to see how public opinion of Sword and Shield has changed. When Sword and Shield were first announced back in February, at least from what I saw, the fan base was overall really freaking hyped. People were immediately choosing their starter and talking about how the game looked so great and so forth. Next, the Pokemon Direct on June 5th happened, and similarly to the first announcement, it seemed to be overall very well received. Some people didn't like Dynamax, but it seemed like most people either were fine with it or liked it. And all of the new Pokemon species that they showed off seemed to be very well received, especially Wooloo. But then E3 happened and Shinx hit the fan tump. While there was very little information revealed about Sword and Shield during the Direct itself, the Nintendo Treehouse Live presentation that immediately followed, that featured Masuda and Omori, completely shifted many people's opinions about the games. That presentation revealed three main pillars that people have focused most of their criticism on or are using as the primary reasons for why they don't think the games will be good. Those are the lack of a national dex, the graphics of the game, and the lack of series advancement. I'm gonna analyze each of these three things separately, starting with the lack of a national dex, also known as the #BringBackTheNationalDex controversy, or my personal favorite term for the whole thing, Dexit. Masuda and Omori revealed that only Pokemon in the Galar Pokedex will be capable of being transferred into Sword and Shield from Pokemon Home. That means if there's a certain Pokemon on one of your 3DS games, in Pokemon Go, or in Pokemon Let's Go that you wanted to bring to Sword and Shield, you are incapable of doing so if it's not in the Galar Pokedex. You can still transfer it to Pokemon Home, but then it's stuck on Pokemon Home. I should reveal up front that this never really bothered or disappointed me. when they revealed it, I actually think I said out loud, okay, that's fine. The reason for that is when I transfer a Pokemon from an older gen game into a newer gen game, it's for one of two reasons. The first reason is to expedite the process of completing the Pokedex. But obviously that reason doesn't matter here, since if the Pokemon are in the Galar Pokedex, I can still transfer them in. The second reason is for me to have Pokemon that I have some kind of sentimental attachment to, usually shiny Pokemon, all together on one game. However, I don't have all my shiny Pokemon all together on one game now, and once I transfer them in, they tend to just sit in my box forever and do nothing. So I'm not even really sure why I do it. I could just all keep them in the same box on an older game. So for me, not being able to transfer some Pokemon from one PC box to another PC box doesn't really matter. That being said, I understand why people are upset about this. While I tend to not use Pokemon from older gens that I have a sentimental attachment to, I actually always try to use a team of totally new gen Pokemon in a new gen playthrough. I understand that some people do have Pokemon that they play through every single game with via transferring in. And there are people who do a lot of competitive battling that have certain competitive Pokemon in older games that they wanted to bring to the new games to use in battle again, but now they can't do so. So, like I said, it doesn't personally affect me, but I understand the frustration. But the public outcry against this went a lot farther than just, oh, this stinks. Many people legitimately believe that the games will be completely ruined by this lack of Pokemon. They also say that the fact that Game Freak wasn't able to get all the Pokemon in, since the process is as simple as just retexturing models that they've already made, that's a bad indicator for how Game Freak handled the game and their time during development, which doesn't bode well for the quality of the final game. Let's first address the claim that the lack of a national dex specifically will ruin the game. By the way, one little nitpick about this whole national dex thing, we haven't actually had a national Pokedex since Gen 6. There is one in Bank, but in the Gen 7 Alola games, while you could transfer any Pokemon in, you don't get a Pokedex entry for them if they're not in the Alola Pokedex, so technically there is no national dex. I think claiming that not being able to bring in half or less of the total Pokemon completely ruins the entire game is a dramatic exaggeration. The vast majority of people assemble a totally new team when they play through from within the game itself. Even if you're disappointed that you won't be able to use your favorite Pokemon on your playthrough team as you play through the main story, that's simply something that's been a reality of Pokemon for a really long time now. There's no way they can fit the hundreds of Pokemon into a singular playthrough before beating the league. There's just simply too many of them. Therefore, the transferring in of older gen Pokemon is something that likely wouldn't occur or be relevant until after you've defeated the Pokemon League. Therefore, claiming that the entire game is ruined when the vast majority of the main story is unaffected is a bit far-fetched. What is less far-fetched is the idea that the National Dex problem is a symptom of a larger issue. The second complaint that I mentioned a little bit ago, that if Game Freak couldn't complete the relatively simple task of bringing in all the old Pokemon, that means that they probably didn't handle the rest of the game very well. I am not a game developer, so if you are a game developer, please forgive me for anything I say that isn't quite right. But claims have been made that the process should be a simple one. They simply have to bring in the models that they have already created and retexture or change the outside of them. While that could be true for some Pokemon, we do have evidence for other Pokemon that Game Freak is doing more than simply retexturing these old models. They are creating new animations or movements. This animation of Weavile laughing is new, and this animation of Wingull is new. Now, how difficult it is or how time-consuming it is to create those new animations is beyond my knowledge level. In fact, it's beyond the knowledge level of pretty much everyone. So while we can't know how much extra time these new animations take, we do know that they're doing more than simply bringing them in and retexturing them. Another thing to consider is that there's gonna be a butt ton of Pokemon. While we don't know how many new Pokemon we're going to get, we do know we're gonna get quite a few, meaning that the total number of Pokemon models is gonna surpass 1,000. The number of species isn't gonna surpass 1,000, but with all the different mega evolutions, Alola forms, and other form differences, the number of different models is easily gonna pass up 1,000. Handling all the retexturing and new animations for all of those Pokemon does sound like it would be an extremely time-consuming thing. So the bottom line about this whole Dexit situation is that it is a very understandable and fair thing to be upset or disappointed about. However, it's probably not gonna ruin the entire game, since it doesn't have a massive effect on the gameplay experience as a whole, since we're still gonna have a ton of Pokemon available in the game. And if you think the fact that they weren't able to do all of this is a bad indicator for the rest of the game, just keep in mind that it's probably a much more time-consuming process than you originally thought. The last thing I want to mention about this Dexit situation is solutions, and from what I've seen, people have posed two main solutions to the issue. The first is patching the Pokemon in after release, and the second is delaying the release of the game. Now, while patching the Pokemon in is completely logical and they could definitely do that, delaying the game is impossible. Pokemon, unlike most game franchises, has a ton of outside factors that affect the game release timeline. There's the TCG, the anime, merch, and plenty of other things that depend on when the game releases. So for Pokemon specifically, a game release delay isn't possible. Now let's talk about the second pillar that I mentioned, the graphics of the game, especially the criticisms toward this tree. This specific tree. This poor tree is just minding his own business and everybody's being so mean to him. People have been eviscerating the appearance of the game shown in the E3 demo, particularly the footage that was in the wild area. They've been bashing the simple 2D textures and the movements of certain Pokemon. It's been mentioned many times how much worse it looks than Breath of the Wild, a game that came out for the same system several years earlier, but looks far better. Whether or not the graphics of a game look good is a very subjective thing, especially because you also have to discuss, oh, is this the graphics of the game or is it the art style of the game? So I don't want to tell you what to think about the graphics. I don't want to tell you, are they good or are they bad? What I do want to do is make sure that you have as much information as possible to make an informed opinion about what you think of the graphics. The first point of information is that the graphics in the non-wild area parts of the game look substantially more detailed. Some people have claimed that these city shots are from cutscenes, but according to Joe Merrick, the webmaster of Cerebi.net and probably the most knowledgeable Pokemon person on the planet that doesn't work for Pokemon, these shots were used and created by using a movable in-game camera and are not from cutscenes. So therefore, that is what these buildings look like when playing through the game. The second thing that's important to realize is that this footage is from a demo. It's footage from an unfinished game. We've seen many times in the past with many different games that the appearance of a game will change noticeably between a demo and the game's final release. So, in other words, the game may not and probably will not look like this in the final release. Another important thing to note is that the developers of Pokemon have to spend a lot more time on the creatures and models of said creatures than the developers of a game like Breath of the Wild do. Pokemon has hundreds of different creatures that they have to deal with the models for, plus all of the people in the game too, so to me it makes sense that they don't have as much time to spend on the environment itself. I'm not trying to justify the appearance of the game, I'm trying to explain why it's probably never gonna look as good as Breath of the Wild does. I also wanted to mention, I've seen people criticize how Wingull moves in the wild area. It's supposed to move like that. Wingull pretty much always flies with its wings just straight out, so that's not an animation problem, that's just what Wingull does. Also, I've seen people make fun of the double kick animation just being, hop up, and then 2 footprints on the opposing Pokemon, and that is a criticism that I think is fair. Double kick has had a bad animation for a long time, because we know they can do animations where the Pokemon goes over and touches the other Pokemon, like with acrobatics or fly, so I do wish that they'd do a better animation for double kick. I understand that me explaining all of this probably comes off as me trying to defend the graphics of the game, but that's not my intention. I'm just trying to inform you as to the reasons of why the game looks like it does. If you aren't okay with the graphics despite all that information, that's totally fine. That's your call. If that changed your opinion on the graphics, that is also fine. If you liked the graphics from the start, that's also fine. Like I said, I'm not trying to form your opinion, I'm just trying to make you informed. The final pillar that I wanted to discuss is evolution. Not Pokemon evolution, but series evolution. The Nintendo Switch has been out for a little over 2 years now, and 2 games that came out in the first year of its lifespan, Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey, are widely heralded as masterpieces. Not only because they are excellent games, Breath of the Wild is my favorite video game of all time, but because they made massive leaps forward for their particular series. Because of the precedent that those 2 games set, many people developed the expectation that Sword and Shield would be similarly groundbreaking. Now, Pokemon Let's Go were the first Pokemon games on the Switch, but pretty much everybody understood that these were tide us over until Gen 8 games. Sword and Shield were the games that for many were supposed to revolutionize Pokemon, since they were a new generation of Pokemon on a home console for the first time ever. But from what I've seen, that's not gonna be the case. Sword and Shield are not going to be revolutionary, at least from what we've seen so far. Now, that's not to say that the series is regressing. I've seen some people say that Pokemon is regressing. That's just simply not true. The games are moving forward. Think of all the new features they're adding. Cooperative multiplayer with the max raid battles, the open world area of the map with the wild area, and the free moving camera as well, the dramatically improved graphics over the 3DS, and the ton of new Pokemon we're gonna get, which is always great. But it's not a massive leap forward. From what we've seen, Sword and Shield seem like they're gonna be formulaic Pokemon games, albeit with the large amount of new generation improvements like we've seen with every new generation of Pokemon. For many people, that's completely fine. They have a passion for Pokemon and the formula that Pokemon games follow. While a larger leap forward would have been great, they're still really excited to play through a brand new region with a brand new Pokemon that looks visually better than any Pokemon game in the past. Except maybe Let's Go. That's a personal opinion thing. But there are people who have gotten tired of the traditional Pokemon formula. They wanted Sword and Shield, the first new generation mainline Pokemon game on a home console for the first time ever, to bring huge change to the series. They wanted to see it be completely open world, or not have turn-based combat, or have other really dramatic changes. Sword and Shield aren't gonna be like that, and those people don't love the traditional Pokemon formula enough to keep doing it over and over again. They wanted a change that's not going to come. At least, not yet. Excluding the Dexit part, that's basically been my understanding of the whole controversy. You've got the people who love formulaic Pokemon and are excited to do it again in the best way yet, and you've got people who wanted a dramatic change, and that's not gonna happen. So the bottom line answer to the question that this video poses, will Sword and Shield be bad, depends on who you are. If you're someone like me, who adores Pokemon and has really enjoyed every single mainline Pokemon game they have ever played, then Sword and Shield will not be bad. You're gonna have a great time because it's gonna be a lot like every other mainline Pokemon game you've played, just better. On the other hand, if you were expecting Generation 8 to revolutionize Pokemon and make a Pokemon version of Breath of the Wild, then Sword and Shield are probably gonna be a letdown for you. Although, I would urge you to wait until the game comes out officially before coming to a final yay or nay decision, because like I said, we don't know what's gonna change between now and release. I just urge every single one of you to be kind to each other even if your opinions don't align. Be kind to other fans, but also be kind especially to the developers of the game, because even if the game's not gonna end up being something that you personally are gonna love, they have worked really, really hard on it, because game design is very difficult. But web design doesn't have to be, thanks to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. If you're looking to create a website for your store, business, art, design, or whatever else, there's no better way to do it than Squarespace. Squarespace makes it easy to make a beautiful site with their extremely user-friendly interface, and you have access to tons of features like traffic overviews, scheduled posts, comments, video backgrounds, and more, all without needing an additional plugin. Plus, you can purchase domains directly through Squarespace. So head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/MandJTV and use code MandJTV for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you want to check out some more of my Pokemon content, I recommend this video here. Alright, that's all I have for now, so till next time, Poke fans, gotta catch them all!